Video editing is the last place where you can save your video as a concept and actually make it appeal to people. Also, end screens are mostly dead. In this video, I'm answering your top 10 questions about video editing. And we're jumping in with number one, which is from Barnacles, and I'm pretty sure it was a joke, but it was how to turn a multi-hour stream VOD into a nice, quick cut video as quickly as possible. And again, this was kind of meant as a jab joke, because I think, the expectation is that you can't. The truth is, that's not an editing trick. That's a planning trick. And pre-planning is part of the production process, but it's the pre-production process. In that, if you just go streaming with no plan, no idea, no expectation of what the end result will be like, you're going to have a damn hard time turning that into video content other than highlighting, specific top tier moments that happen or whatever. Whereas if you spend a few less hours actually streaming and a few more hours planning out what your streams are going to be, the things you're going to talk about, the way you're going to format it, then you should have no problem turning that into a video. Even if it is just you have a 10-minute segment planned in like a 3-hour live stream where that 10 minutes is mostly focused on this real serious topic that you want to talk about, that you are the authority or expert on, or that you're showing someone how to do. If you can nail that planning phase, then you're going to have a smooth as butter time turning that into a video, because you know exactly what the idea is from the start. That is what I set out to do with a lot of my streams when it comes to, streamer news and other shows. It's what Ludwig does to turn his streams into top tier YouTube videos that get millions and millions of views. That is currently the biggest strategy I can recommend, is just spending less time streaming and more time planning what the heck you're going to do on stream. And you're going to find you have a huge advantage when it comes to taking that and producing additional content out of it. You can even plan little segments here and there in between to come up during like down parts of your stream, or you can plan the entire stream to be a multi-part show that you break up into other videos, rather than I'm going to stream random subject for no reason and then figure out how to craft that into video later, which is most people's approach. Just figuring out what is going to make this stream awesome and turn it and make the best video out of it is going to make the stream better and give you that video you want. However, if you're looking for, little tips to make that a little bit easier, if you're streaming to Twitch, Twitch has a feature called Stream Markers, which allows you to basically press a hotkey and it adds markers to your stream VOD. So then you can go back and reference those later. So if you need to mark where segments are, or when you say something exciting, you can set that as a hotkey on your Stream Deck, or on, whatever, or just a general hotkey, or you can have your moderators or community set those markers as well for you. And then you have something to reference when you're coming back. If you're not using Twitch, or you want something a little more tangible, there is an OBS plugin called OBS Info Writer, which will just make a text file with the time codes of whenever you press the hotkey based on whenever you started streaming or recording. So you got to line that up a little bit, but that will make your life a lot easier for at least going back and finding things if you don't want to scrub through a massive video. The second question is a heavy hitter. What is the hardest thing about editing, and why is it overthinking the entire project? Now, in the context of this entire discussion, I'm EposVox, the stream professor. I make educational videos for YouTubers and streamers and people like that. My entire assumption is that you're making content for YouTube, social media, those kinds of things, and you're not editing for like TV or something like that. In that context, you're probably the one who scripted and planned the video or whatever. So when it comes to overthinking the entire project in the edit, that is because that is the final, the buck stops here. That is the final place that you can save your video. A lot of people think that, all the weight of your video, your concept, all of that lies on your title and thumbnail. And those are very crucially important parts of the video releasing part. But realistically, it doesn't matter what title and thumbnail combination you come up with. That is just putting a lipstick on a pig if you didn't make a video concept or produce an entertaining video that people are going to watch, they're going to share, they're going to finish to the end, or at least most of the way through it. They're going to keep watching more of your videos because they enjoyed it so much. The edit is the last place that you can truly make a lasting impact to make your video shine. But the cool thing about the edit, and this is, a common phrase when it comes to like movie editing and things like that, is that the script is either revised or rewritten a third time in the edit, and that you have the flexibility to take chunks, move them around whenever you want. So many of the questions that I get about video editing, and, the prompting for this video where I tweeted out, follow me on Twitter if you missed it, or posted on the community tab asking for your questions about this. A lot of people approach video editing from a linear perspective. We're not editing tapes anymore. Linear editing is dead. We are doing non-linear editing. So if you didn't come up with a great, impactful start to your video, find some exciting thing you said in the middle or towards the end of the video, copy that to the front as a teaser to say like coming up in this video or whatever, and use that as your intro. You have the freedom to completely reshape and redevelop your video and its story in the editing process. And that is why overthinking the entire project is possibly the hardest part about editing, because you have complete control in that stage, which you need to learn to use to its maximum potential. I got a question from someone who said they have a lot of programming experience and want to know how they can use programming to speed up their video editing process. And this was a really interesting question because my gut reaction is going to be, well, you can't really, but there are projects out there that have attempted to do this. I don't remember the person's name off the top of my head, but I will have it linked in the description if I'm not showing it on screen. There was a coder who was in college for coding or something who developed a project where they were basically building their own AI of sorts. It wasn't really AI, but a program that looked for like the most exciting scenes in a bunch of footage and chopped it all together to try to make a vlog seem more interesting. And I've known people even back in like 2015 who were coding things to just basically look for silence in the audio and just cut those gaps to pick up the pace and do things like that. So you could take a swing at those kinds of attempts and build something from there. My big idea, if I could put like a bounty out there, I don't have money for that, but if I could put a bounty out there, I would love for something like Athena-scope, where it uses OCR to scan your frames for, in-game text. This is specifically for gaming videos, but it could apply to other things. But in the context of gaming videos, like I don't make a whole lot of gaming videos. I do now on Lost Saves. If you haven't checked out that channel and you're interested in game nostalgia, I have that. But, my main content isn't gaming stuff, but I still record a ton of gameplay footage. And I have a lot of cool moments in there. But going through hours upon hours of either stream VODs or Shadowplay highlights to find those cool clips is tedious, if not logistically impossible for someone who has something better to do. I would love to take the OCR, which is, the text reading capabilities, tell it to look for this specific text block that pops up in the middle of the screen to say you killed or, overkill or score or whatever. And just scans through my gameplay footage and chops off, a little bit before, a little bit after. And there are ways to do it with FFmpeg that you don't have to re-encode the footage. And then you have a whole big highlight bucket that you can pull from to make more exciting videos. I would love something like that. I don't want to compete with Athena-scope's like montage making and all their cool features, but the core concept of just using like Python or something to load up OCR, scan your frames, and dump out your highlights is actually a fairly simple task that you could use if that's the kind of video you're making. Alternatively, there are embedded scripting languages used in like After Effects, and even Resolve Fusion can use Python for a lot of things. I think Premiere loads JavaScript, I want to say, in the custom panels and plugins, and you could develop plugins, of course. And then obviously there's like After Effects expressions. So there are ways that you can integrate coding and video editing, but to just specifically speed up your video editing process. I mean, you could script out like, if you record some A-roll, you could set up a hotkey that, applies all your post-processing and then manually imports it into a video and like imports all your files from a folder or something. And like I have Stream Deck buttons that automatically create subfolders for my video organization. So I'll make a new project folder and then press one button and it makes all the folders I need within that. But for the editing process itself, I don't really know how that would apply. Similarly, just how to optimize or speed up video editing in the first place. Got quite a few comments about this. First and foremost, map your custom hotkeys to whatever you're comfortable using. If you're moving from one editor to another, then make sure whatever hotkeys you typically use the most, you are mapping from that, what you used before to your new software. DaVinci Resolve has a keyboard import like hotkey thing where it imports supposedly Premiere's hotkeys. I didn't find it actually importing the things I want, and I use customized hotkeys anyway for everything. So I just went and manually instead of adding that extra level. So when you're learning a new video editor, there's the level of having to learn all the new UI and the effects names and the workflow. That's already a big learning curve. Learning a whole bunch of new hotkeys that you've already developed muscle memory for on top of that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And so I don't generally recommend that. Instead, I recommend mapping what you're comfortable with and setting up that way. Otherwise, there are tons of profiles out there you can get from like slideshow effects and things like that for Stream Decks or other macro pads, the Loop Deck, or just mapping yourself an auto hotkey to, map out custom functions or to expand your hotkey capability for making actions faster. And then otherwise, it's just down to developing a specific workflow where you do, what you want to do in the order that you want to do it. There's also, proxies if you need to speed up your actual decode of footage. I have a whole video about optimizing. Actually, I have multiple videos about optimizing both Premiere Pro and DaVinci Resolve, most of which still apply today. I will have linked below that you can check out. But in terms of like optimizing your workflow for editing, for example, when I shoot a video like this, which has my A-roll, and then I usually have B-roll or screen capture or whatever on top of it, I will sync up my audio and edit my A-roll first. So I'll go through, chop everything up, cut out the mistakes, do the punch-ins, do whatever I need to do, and do that first because I can do it very quickly and there are no real creative decisions at play. Like I will make some creative decisions, like if I don't want to punch in for dramatic effect or just to hide, quick cuts or whatever, I can do that. But otherwise, I'm not doing a whole lot of creative work yet. That's just the that's just the mechanics of chopping up a video. That I can do really quickly. And so I speed through that. And by dedicating the time to doing that first, it's a lot faster than trying to make all those creative decisions for where does B-roll go, what does the rest of the video look like, etc. I can go through that, and then that frees me up to also make decisions like, do I need to move sections around? Do I need to come up with something more interesting for the intro hook? Do I need more B-roll? Those kinds of things. You don't get a feel for it if you're trying to go linearly from start to finish with your edit. Here's a quick and easy one. What is nesting? Have you ever heard of Russian nesting dolls? Or have you ever stacked up your bowls or plates in your dishes cabinet? Basically the same idea of that. It's taking one thing and putting it in another thing. And that one thing that you just put in the other thing can already be a completed thing. So for example, when it comes to video editing, it's putting a timeline or a sequence within another, and that's to stack up effects or organize your timeline. So let's look at, for example, I tweeted out one of my this technically isn't glitch art, but one of my glitch arty pieces, which is the animated robot head. That's kind of like one of those crypto style avatars. It wasn't the direction I meant to go with it, but it's where things went. I tweeted out my little robot head. That is created with a bunch of nested sequences in After Effects. So I have the base of the head, which has, it's a square shape, but has a bunch of textures and effects happening to it. That is nested in another sequence where then I apply the eyes and the mouth, and another sequence where I apply the helmet or the overall circle shape. And so by applying, nesting those together, you can then apply different effects over it. So my A-roll, I will often do in a dedicated timeline where I have my super long recording, like this is going to be like a 30-minute recording of me just talking head with my audio. I will put that in its own timeline or sequence, depending on what program you use. It calls it different things. And then I will sync up my audio, make all my cuts, and do all my color grading in this sequence, and then nest it in my overall, the project sequence that I overlay B-roll and things onto. And this way, I can go ahead and super quickly chop things up and then go back and color grade later and still have the full original footage. Or I can go back and make changes and things like that. It is just a way to condense your footage to apply effects to overall things. Or like say, I have a bunch of B-roll that I want to apply and overlay to or something like that. I could do that with an adjustment layer, but if I have a really complex timeline, having a nested sequence where I'm only affecting that can make things easier. I can explain this more in the more in-depth tutorials we're doing soon. Should you have an end screen? I'm going to say no for the most part because most people do it wrong. So the thing with YouTube audience retention now, and I'm going to just give a TLDR on this, is that you want as few elements in your video, which means cutting out super long intro stingers, over-explaining what the video is, just jump into it, those kinds of things, as few elements as possible that would cause someone to click off or get bored. And that is especially crucial when giving signals that the video is over. The thing I struggle so much, I will give you signals way ahead of time that the video is ending, and then I'll say goodbye in like 3 different ways. I've been working on this a lot because whenever you start signaling that the video is over, people are going to click off. They're either going to close it or they're going to watch something else, and you want to be there to give them something else to watch and a compelling reason why. An end screen is a massive sign that something is about to end. So if I still use mine, and I still use mine because I paid a lot for it and it looks great, I will put it as at the last possible second of the video just to house the embedded end cards on YouTube that I am, linking to videos with. But you don't want to use it until like the last 5 or 10 seconds at most. That way it's just there to give someone else to click on, and you're moving people along. If you are using it for the full 20 seconds and you're like, thanks for watching, everybody. Here's a video. Thanks so much. I'm going to be back next week with 5 more videos. And sorry it's been so long. And join my Discord and join my Facebook and follow on Twitter. Again, all things I do. But those, you're just wasting your audience retention and, lowering that number that tells YouTube your video is a success. So I think the concept of utilizing YouTube's end cards to point people to other videos is super crucial, and you need to make sure you're giving a really compelling reason why. I've been trying to adapt this strategy, and I've been doing a bad job at it because I'm just like, well, if you're just looking for something else to watch, here you go. That's not a compelling reason. You got to give someone a reason that what they've been watching right now cannot be complete without this next video. Stay tuned to the end of this video to see an example of that. This next question breaks my heart to see, and even more so given that there were multiple questions worded almost identically about it, and that is how to make video editing less tedious and soul-crushing. My gut reaction to this, and I mean this in the best possible way, but my gut reaction to this, knowing zero context of what they're editing and what creative work they're doing, my gut reaction to that is you're just making bad videos. If the editing process is that tedious and soul-crushing, you're not making good content, either because the content is bad, thus the editing experience is bad, or you're having a bad experience editing, thus the end result you make is going to be bad. Like, it doesn't matter which one's the chicken or the egg here. The end result is probably going to be a bad video. And that means that you need to get more creative with the ways that you approach it, with the styles that you present in, with the ambition of what you actually want to make and produce. Something is missing there to make it a fun and creative and enjoyable experience. And until you solve that, editing's gonna be tedious because it's a chore versus being the experience. Editing is like my favorite part of video making. Everyone jumps to YouTubers. I went on a whole Twitter rant about this if you want to learn more, but like everyone assumes that once you get to a certain point in YouTubing, you should farm out all your work to editors and things like that. But like I spent over 15 years now mastering video editing because I love editing video. I don't want to just hand that off to someone else. Like, it's what I enjoy, and it's where, as I mentioned before, a huge part of the craft comes in. So if you're really hating it that much, either being a video editor isn't for you and you should maybe look towards, outsourcing that or something, or you need to find a way to spice it up so that your videos are a lot more fun, more challenging. Your content's not going to improve if every video is tedious and soul-crushing because you're not doing anything new. So then you need to set challenges for yourself where every video you're doing something new, you're trying a new effect, you're trying to improve on a specific aspect. That way it's always spicy and you're always learning and having fun. That sounded really hippie, but it's true. I had a few people asking about J and L cuts and how to like automate it or how to make it the best, or what tips are for that. And I just want to say J and L cuts are an important like basic fundamental of video editing that you need to learn what is in order to, build upon that for additional video editing work, but don't overuse it. There's this trend, and I don't want to talk down on too many people here or whatever, but the trend when it comes to internet education about any subject, photography, videography, coding, probably anything really, is because people come to it from I'm going to learn through tutorials perspective rather than going to school for it or proper training or whatever. A lot of YouTubers get away with treating basic 101 level fundamental things that you would read in your first book or see in your first class session if you took school for it as this, profound thing just because a lot of people who aren't professionally trained didn't know about it and act like it's this game-changing thing. And J and L cuts are this thing where like every video editing tips and tricks video from people who are just getting started are going to tell you need J and L cuts to make your video better and it's the best thing in the world, and it's all very overblown. It is a basic tool that you should use in certain circumstances and not make, like some people say, you should replace every jump cut with a J and L cut. And that's just not true, especially, again, on YouTube where jump cuts are kind of part of the culture. Jump cuts used to be this big forbidden taboo that you should never do. Now it's part of the culture. It's kind of expected. It's part of the fun of keeping that pace thing. People also say you should cut out every possible pause and gap. And that is a very bad idea when it comes to like facilitating learning and attention spans and things like that. So don't do that either. You don't really need to learn. You don't really need to use them that often. It's only cool in certain situations. I will say it makes way more sense in most cases with like a talking headshot like this to overlay your cuts with some B-roll or some screen capture or some product photos, something referencing what you're seeing. If you're having to cut up your talking head part that much, your talking head part shouldn't be showing that much. So you shouldn't really have the opportunity to use J and L cuts that often. In my, again, professional opinion of editing for 15 plus years now and a multitude of different editors. And I was the video editor for my college newspaper. Like, I have some degree of experience here. Don't use them that much. But someone also asked if you can automate that in some way. I guess like applying it like a transition. And I don't know of any way you can, and really it doesn't make sense to, because you want to time the degree to which your J and your L tuck under and over each other based on the specific scenario you're working with. There's no exact setting you should use every single time. It doesn't really make sense. So you should just hold Alt and drag your clip over the next one. Again, I recommend just doing J and L cuts with just B-roll and not your A-roll. All right, I've got one really awesome question that I want to answer to end this, but before we get to that, I got a few questions, because when I tweeted out asking for questions from you all, I got a couple questions about the timeline that I tweeted out. We have a whole timelines channel on my Discord server, discord.gg/EposVox, where we share our video editing work, and we got like a Resolves tutorials channel and whatever. I had a bunch of questions asking what everything else on the video track was. And this goes back to what I talked about at the beginning of the video, where so many people just starting out treat YouTube videos as this linear process, where like, this is what I recorded, so this is what I must edit. This main track I record for my videos, like I put a lot of work into making the set look nice and getting my lighting nice and my colors good. This is the least of what your viewers should see. Your face is cool. You're probably decently attractive, but your viewers shouldn't be seeing your face that much. When it comes to attention spans and even communicating information, just a talking head is a waste of time. You might as well be an audio podcast for the most part. You should be showing engaging and informational elements that show on screen, keep viewers interested, and also show rather than telling what you're talking about. Now, you don't need to be an overstimulating, like going over the top with this, but this part of your video should not be the bulk of what your viewer sees ever. So when you see timelines like this, it's not just a bunch of mess and nonsense. It is B-roll and screen captures and images and references and transitions and all of that. That is the bulk of the edit. Your main video track 1 and your audio track 1, that is just a recording. That is not the video. If that's most of your video, I'm sorry, but again, you've probably made a bad video. And I don't mean this to be insulting to anyone. We all started there. We've all been there. And every once in a while, you may just have something so important to say that that's really all you're going to film, and you're just going to say it, and that's fine. But for your average videos, you're going to want a lot of tracks. Now, there are some people, and obviously the magnetic timeline nonsense of Final Cut Pro works way differently. I don't mess with that. But like, there are some people who will record all of their footage and put it all on the same track and just overcut their A-roll with the B-roll and try to transition between it. Honestly, that creates more problems than it solves. I'm a fan of the stair-step method, where every new, video overlaying is on the next track and you manage it from there. It makes it a lot easier to make changes after the fact. It's a lot easier to keep track of where everything is. And again, you can nest or pre-compose whenever you need to layer up and shrink down your timeline for visibility's sake and things like that. Final question here is what software to start with. Had a few different questions worded in different ways of, what do I think about this software, or what software should you start with? Ultimately, the video editing software you use does not matter. Just like the camera that you use or the microphone that you use ultimately doesn't matter, because the viewer doesn't care. The viewer cares for a camera that your video looks good. It's not super shaky. It's not distracting. It looks great. It sounds great. Your viewer cares that your audio sounds good. You're clear. There's not a whole bunch of distracting background noise. There's no, obnoxious frequencies grating their ears. When a music studio makes a chart-topping track and they spend thousands upon thousands of dollars on all of the equipment and the production and the engineering to make it happen, that's not because someone on their phone with earbuds is going, yeah, man, I can hear that Neve preamp in here, and I can really hear the room tone in the drum. Not anything like that. It's because, well, first of all, garbage in, garbage out, but they're crafting the experience for the viewer. The viewer isn't there to dissect that. The viewer doesn't know what video editing software you used. The viewer doesn't care. As long as you make a great, entertaining video, no one's going to know. No one's going to care. However, I will say, in terms of compelling options, DaVinci Resolve at this point is the most compelling video editor I could ever possibly recommend. It started out as primarily a color grading tool, but also Fusion, which was like a CGI tool separately. It's all combined now. But it started out as primarily a color grading tool in the industry and has taken off and been gaining more and more popularity as a full-fledged NLE, a video editor you'd use for normal editing. And its performance is insane. Its stability is way above Adobe Premiere Pro. I'll have a whole separate video talking about the comparisons. But on top of all that, you can get 90% of the features for free. You're going to lose some of the GPU performance, so you're going to want to generate proxies or convert your footage to ProRes or something. But then if you do want the full, performance engine and functionality, it's a one-time purchase. There's no subscription. There's no pay more for the next version. You pay once. If you bought it 10 years ago, you still own the newest version, and you get 2 activation licenses at a time. If you bought it now, you get it indefinitely in the future. And it can replace an entire suite of software, because there's the primary, like it can replace software like Adobe Bridge if you use programs to organize your footage with the media and cut tabs. It can replace normal video editors with the edit tab. It can replace color grading software with the color tab. It can replace After Effects and motion graphics software with Fusion. It's a node workflow instead of layers. It's harder to learn, but you can do just about anything in it. It can replace digital audio workstations with Fairlight, and you can use all this stuff to edit, photos and make graphics if you want, and just export them as images. And so it can replace your image editor if you want as well. It is super compelling. Speaking of DaVinci Resolve, our next video next week about video editing will be this same style of video, but answering your questions about DaVinci Resolve, leading into I'm making probably an entire little DaVinci Resolve for content creators and YouTubers masterclass coming to Nebula very soon. So go check that out. Otherwise, if you want to optimize your video editor, if you're one of the people asking how to edit faster and how to make it faster, I have 2 videos right here on screen for how to optimize both Adobe Premiere Pro and DaVinci Resolve. So make sure you check those out, because you really need to use these tricks whenever you're editing. Remember, be kind, rewind.